All coaches want motivated athletes. So the question becomes, what are the best motivational strategies? Well, if we follow the culture, it has to be about getting something for play and sport. And that's the tragic part. Most coaches think the best way to motivate athletes is to always promote getting them something externally, or what we call extrinsic motivation. Extrinsic motivation occurs when the inclination to pursue and persist is imposed by these external factors. Oftentimes, these external factors are negative, things like threats of punishment or coercion. But they can be positive external factors like scholarships and trophies. While scholarships and trophies can be positive, in an entitlement culture, they can quickly become negative. Don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with receiving recognition for doing well. But when it becomes the primary source of motivation, these externals have to be increased and increased and increased, and it comes to a point of just being ridiculous. Extrinsic motivation comes about by three things that happen. One, the athlete and parent. Now remember, we have to coach 2 generations now. Are always told you ought to get something for playing sport. These external factors then become the main driver to motivate athletes. 2, when these externals are constantly put as the reason for playing sport, the athlete and parent internalize this and now think, this is why I play sport, which leads to the last, which they now identify, both athlete and parent, that this is why I play sport, to validate themselves for some type of external rewards. The problem, whatever the external reward, it'll never be enough. Let's give 3 examples. 3 different levels of playing sport. Level 1, I was at a Little League sign-up a few years back. You know that time when you register, pay, and then you're placed on a team. A father was registering his 9-year-old son, wrote a check out to the Little League that I was helping out at, and was handing it to me. I was just volunteering at the registration table. His 9-year-old son tapped me on the shoulder, and I looked at him and said, son, yeah, what's up? He said, with all seriousness, he said, how big's the trophy? Now remember, he hadn't even been put on a team yet. So as a college instructor, a colleague and I did a study on awards given out at high school banquets in the postseason. We surveyed a good number of coaches that had been coaching for at least one full generation, 25 years or more. And we asked them this basic question: how many awards did you give out at your athletic banquet at the end of the year when you first started? And for team sports, there were generally 4 awards given out. 1, most valuable player. 2, best offensive player. 3, best defensive player. And lastly, your most improved player. Then we asked them, how many awards do you give out now? And oh my, they just chuckled. They said most of the time the awards literally line up from the whole length of the whole table. We still give out those original 4 awards, plus junior awards, plus sophomore awards, plus freshman awards, best citizens awards, most likely to exceed awards, captain award, best looking kid, ugliest looking kid, you get it. You see the picture? Everybody's walking out with an award. Here's the problem with extrinsic motivation. It's never enough. Let's go to that high school coach at the beginning of the school year with that mandatory meeting, which is good to have with parents and players. Here's what we so often hear. Hey, we're glad you're here tonight. We want a commitment to the program. For all you young athletes and you new parents, if you'll just commit to the off-season workouts, be a part of our club travel team during the summer. And if everything progresses well, by the time you're a senior, we'll be able to get you and every one of you said scholarship. Don't get me wrong, a scholarship's awesome. But most people don't understand the odds of getting a scholarship. Very few, in fact. About 2% of high school athletes are awarded some type of athletic scholarship to compete in college. And only a few sports at the highest level even give full scholarship. So coaches end up lying to about 96% of the athletes and parents about a chance for a scholarship. So why do they do that? Because we only know how to motivate in the extrinsic. We give a promise of external motivation so that the parents and kids will stay motivated. The end result for the majority of athletes and parents and coaches is frustration, disappointment, anger, and then disillusionment. Now don't get me wrong. Coaches, you need to promote your athletes for scholarships. There has to be a better way to motivate those, since it's only going to work for a small percentage. This is one of the number 1 reasons why coaches will leave after 3 to 4 years at a particular job. They get frustrated with the parents' expectations, and the coaches created that because they don't have a better way to motivate. Remember, when you motivate out of the extrinsic, it's never enough. Hey, let's go to the highest level of performance, that professional athlete. Where I live, we had a particular professional athlete that told the ownership that his $9 million contract was not enough and needed to be raised closer to $30 million. $9 million. Now, if it had been at the end of the contract, living in a capitalist culture, I understand that. But this was during the contract, and he made innuendos that he would not come back to play unless a new demand was met. Now, here's my question. When is $9 million not enough to play sport? See, when you motivate out of the extrinsic, it's never enough. A much better way to motivate is to motivate from the inside out. Intrinsic motivation occurs when the inclination to pursue and persist is driven by an interest or enjoyment of the task itself and exists within the individual rather than rely on external pressure. Research indicates that intrinsic motivation leads to greater accomplishment, longer lasting, and it's fun. You can tell intrinsically motivated athletes by their demeanor. It feels good. There's a sense of internal stimulation, a sense of curiosity, novelty, and it seems to make just better meaning of life. It's deeper and it's richer, and it costs very little. So if this is a better way, then why don't most coaches employ this style of motivation? 2 reasons. They don't know how, and it's hard to measure in an intangible way. In other words, you only know it's working as you see it unfolding in the actions of pursuing and persisting throughout the course of the year. In the next session, let's look at a principle that we can utilize to help our athletes become more intrinsically motivated. When it comes to the off-season or preseason, you now should have an understanding of a simple principle you can utilize to help foster intrinsic motivation in your players, stepping into their lives away from the athletic environment. Now, how about during the season, like at practice? Let me introduce a concept that seems to have significant intrinsic motivational qualities just by how we coach at practice. A term that is used interchangeably with the word coaching is the term modeling. See, the beauty of second dimensional coaching is not about a bunch of words we say, but rather who we are and what we do. Kids today have heard everything. They have access to more information and have had more people tell them things to do or not to do. What I love about this generation is they want to see it now, not just be told it. Words into action, that's the key. Well, there's 3 types of modeling: leader modeling, peer modeling, and self-modeling. Let's go through them in that order. Number 1, let's look at leader modeling. This is where the coach demonstrates the skill or the behavior. It must start with the leader, the coach, you. Nothing has changed. You set the practice schedule. You determine what skills are to be taught and what strategies are to be employed. In other words, you orchestrate the program you lead. See, the issue with first dimensional coaches is this is all they know. I'll tell you what to do, show you how to do it, and then you go and do it. Now look, I love that model. It's the model I grew up with. Why? Because see, I was the last of that blind obedience generation. I just did what I was told by authority figures. See, now kids and parents seem to question everything. So if that only gets me mad, then I've just reverted back to being a fan, not a coach. I need a strategy. A big part of second dimensional coaching is about our ability to operate from a place of empathy. Empathy is the ability to understand and share the feelings of another. Remember that a coach, although often respected as an authoritative figure, is not always the easiest person for an athlete to relate to. They often hold you up on a pedestal. They expect you to be an expert. But that doesn't mean they can see themselves executing a task with the same ease. This creates a case that the coach may not always be the most effective way to show athletes how to perform a task. Yes, you need to set the tone. But simple leader modeling doesn't guarantee that there will be attention or learning that actually takes place. It can be effective, but a more effective way for an athlete to learn is through peer modeling. Peer modeling occurs when one person demonstrates a skill or a task to another peer. There are two ways that peer modeling can be used to cultivate a learning environment. The first is where the student knowingly acts as the model and demonstrates a skill or a task for the team. So after you introduce the skill set you want learned, look around on your team to those that know how to do the skill really well. And when you begin to practice that skill set, and after you have told them what needs to be done, have the ones who know the skill actually lead that learning time. Let the ones who know how to do it well coach others. You set up the parameters as far as time, but you are letting those who know how to do it well help those who need help. For this type of modeling to be effective, the atmosphere needs to be very open and encouraging. Remember to empathize with your athletes. You know, at first it can be very uncomfortable or nerve-wracking for a kid to stand up in front of their peers and to demonstrate. You can help ease them into this type of peer modeling role by having them work on one-on-one situations with teammates or in small groups. See, knowing your kids is the key. And it's important to know them well enough to know how they will respond to being set up as the model. If you have a kid who you know won't respond well to being out in front yet, peer modeling can still be guided by you as a coach in a way that doesn't necessarily set him or her up as the authority. When that athlete achieves a particular success, point out that success to the team. And then ask him or her to explain to the team what process was just used to be successful. Conduct an impromptu interview and ask them specific questions so they in turn teach specific coaching points. These are more effective ways for kids to learn because the direct comparison between athletes and their peers are more apparent. The situation becomes more influential and motivating. Now, both of these methods are called peer modeling. And listen, this generation loves it. When they see one of their own do it well, they will learn it more quickly. Notice I didn't say pick the kids that are seniors, have the highest GPA, come from the best families. No, they just know how to do the skill well. Watch how quickly those that don't know the skill learn it. See, this generation has grown up being taught the concept of peer pressure. They were taught if you hang around those that are bad, you eventually will become that which is bad. Well, the opposite is just as true. If you hang around those that are good, you will eventually become that which is good. It's crazy how it works. Now, to a first-dimensional coach, it looks like they're kind of giving up power and authority. But a second-dimensional coach understands that we are motivating the mind to do well as related to others. Listen, I remember my oldest son. He was in early elementary school, and he was having trouble demonstrating some good manners. Now, you can probably tell from my accent, we live in the South. And our culture is, we like our children to say things like, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, yes, sir, no, sir, and thank you. He was going through what we call the yeah stage. When any authority figure asked him to do something, he might say yeah or nah. And it bothered me, because it seemed like I was not able to teach him this cultural respect that I thought he should have. My wife and I left for a weekend trip, and we had to leave our son with another family. The other family were good friends who also had a child about our son's age. We left on a Friday, got home Sunday evening. When we picked our son up, I'll never forget this. He looked at the mother of the home we had just stayed at for the weekend, and he said to her, Thank you, ma'am, for letting me stay here with you. I looked at my wife with quizzitive eyes. The next morning, as we were leaving to go to school, he turned to his mom and said, "Hey, Mom, thanks for making me breakfast." Now, you have to understand, this was no special breakfast. It was the usual hurry up and get dressed, you're going to be late for school breakfast. Maybe toast, butter, jelly, maybe juice. But that was about it. But he was appreciative and thankful. So my question is, where did he gain these manners? You know the answer. He had learned them from the other child he had stayed with for those 3 days. He had learned the manners in 3 days that I could not teach him in 3 months. Why? Because he saw it modeled from a peer. It works.